I've been a photographer for the better part of 30 years. Many people would call me a good, or at least a successful photographer. I think I've just been plain lucky. But I've had the willingness to walk that extra mile, wait that extra moment, to get the one picture no one else would get. When India began celebrations of her 50th year as a free country, I saw the occasion as my big chance. I would travel around the country and capture prize-winning pictures as the nation celebrated. Well, I did travel, and I did take a lot of pictures. But neither the journey nor the pictures turned out quite the way I expected. The first time I saw him, nothing I'd heard prepared me for what he turned out to be. Or this young woman, whose energy is only matched by her refusal to waste words. But it was here that I stopped to look around and observe things, rather than just focus through my lens. Chitrakoot. According to the epic Ramayana, it was here that Lord Ram established his first home, after giving up his kingdom and retiring to a life of exile in the forest. Leading me into a cave on a hillside, the Pandit told me the story of how every sacred river in India came to Chitrakoot to salute Ram. The Godavari, however, was denied that right, but she came anyway, stealing her way underground from the Deccan plateau. The stream is called the Gupt Godavari, the hidden Godavari River, which disappears mysteriously once it leaves the cave. That's understandable, because outside lies the Malwa Plateau, a land of dust, rock, and extreme heat. Here, water is central to people's lives, especially for its women. In rural India, managing water resources is the exclusive domain of women. In essence, this means trudging several miles to fetch water. In recent times, a simple contraption has managed to change this pattern radically: the hand pump. Villages in the Banda region are now proud owners of hand pumps, installed by the State Water Board. There were obvious advantages to be gained by having a captive source of water within each village, not least the fact that women could avoid the drudgery of the daily trek. But there is a problem. Hand pumps tend to break down, especially in the summer, and the Water Board finds it difficult to maintain them. Fortunately, the women of Banda are always at hand. As the region's traditional water managers, they have trained themselves to repair hand pumps. This added to their responsibilities, but it also gave them a new and unsuspected power. Here in Banda, caste prejudice and notions of male superiority are almost articles of faith, but that's changing. The true impact of the hand pump is most visible in the social sphere. Access to water is no longer the privilege of the upper castes. For Savitri of Choti Marayan village, learning how to repair a hand pump was an act of liberation. Arriving in this village as a child bride, she, like her husband and his family, worked as bonded laborers. Living in the shadow of the village's richest and most powerful family, Savitri decided one day to break free. But freedom came at a price. Her husband was too timid to follow her example. Savitri has had to fend for herself and raise her children on her own. But that hasn't stopped her from attending to the 56 villages entrusted to her. Today, the very people who heaped humiliations upon her seek her help for her expert water management skills. Savitri is by no means an exception. There are nearly 50 others like her in the region. Like Chandravati of Kabarapur. In a place like Banda, a young woman seeking to become a mechanic is not just a curiosity, she is a threat. When Chandravati got herself an education and learned how to repair hand pumps, her husband resisted tooth and nail. His resistance only increased her resolve. Chandravati's husband today is a man transformed, taking pride in the fact that the well-being of all the neighboring villages depends largely on his wife. In Chandravati, Savitri, and all the others who ensure the daily miracle of survival in Banda, I see a refreshing freedom. The freedom of those who have discovered the power to change their own lives. A power conferred on them by a simple mixture of basic education and training in hand pump repair. The next day, I wanted to see the place where this transformation through technology began. As I walked into the Karvi Training Center, I realized that even greater changes await Banda. Where will they go from here, I wondered. Half a subcontinent away in Kerala, at the temple of Saraswati, the goddess of learning, I met this young woman intently watching her son go through Vidya Arambham, the rite of initiation into learning. In her own way, she has also initiated many people to learn. But to tell her story, I must tell you more about Kerala. Kerala emerged from the sea when the divine sage threw his mace into the ocean in order to expand the Indian landmass. No wonder they call it God's own country. Life expectancy in Kerala is the highest in India. Infant mortality rates are the lowest in the country. And the rate of population growth is amongst the lowest in developing countries. I read somewhere that the key to this achievement is literacy. Learning is more than a skill or a tool in Kerala. It's an article of faith. And nowhere is this better illustrated than in the town of Kottayam, the first in India to achieve complete literacy. Kottayam was always a logical candidate for this distinction. The town is host to Kerala's first newspaper, the state's first printing press, and the country's most widely read newspaper. In 1989, the administration resolved to attain complete literacy by June of that year. A drive was launched to identify illiterates. Volunteers who were mobilized to teach reading and writing often met with resistance. But gradually they succeeded in breaking it down, and Kottayam looked set to achieve its target. But with only 3 days left for the deadline, one man stood between Kottayam and complete literacy. And his name was Kuttappan Arangathumali. The literacy drive meant nothing to him. He was quite willing to let the world go by. Nothing the volunteers told him would persuade him to break a vow he had made to himself 40 years earlier. As a bright-eyed 7-year-old, Kuttappan had started going to school like everyone else. A week later, he went into the classroom as usual, and that day he got into a quarrel with a classmate, an upper caste boy. The teacher whipped Kuttappan, but let off the other offender. Throwing his slate away in disgust, Kuttappan fled. That day, he resolved never to return to school. Remaining illiterate would be his permanent protest against injustice and discrimination. 40 years later, he saw no reason to change that resolve. Kuttappan's obstinacy was matched only by the determination of one 16-year-old volunteer. Each one, teach one, was the cry of the literacy campaign. But the tireless Indu Lekha had gone well beyond that modest target. On returning from school each day, she would sit down with people twice her age, sharing her skills with them. Hours before the deadline ended, Kuttappan's resistance collapsed. Reluctantly, he consented to be taught how to read and write. Kuttappan became the most important statistic in the municipal history of Kottayam and went on to light the lamp on June the 25th, 1989, when Kottayam proclaimed itself to the world as totally literate. Today, Kuttappan lives in his native village in Paduva, where he earns a living as a professional tree climber, plucking coconuts. Kuttappan seems now to cherish the gift of literacy, if you judge him by the fact that he so eagerly shares it with his grandson, even though it seems a little too early. At the Saraswati temple, the initiation ceremony is coming to an end. Indu Lekha went on to teach more people to read and write than any other volunteer in the literacy campaign. But she takes special pride in her success in the Kuttappan saga. Indu Lekha is a lot like the women of Banda. Their idealism translates itself into action and results. I must have photographed it 1,000 times. And yet this poem in marble has never ceased to amaze me. I sometimes wonder what the Taj Mahal represents to people like Agra's Jatav community. The hated task of curing hides and making leather products was assigned to them. They were untouchables, consigned to ghettos on the outskirts of the city. It would have been little consolation for them to know that the army of the Mughal Empire marched in Jatav-manufactured finery, harnesses, saddles, and footwear. The ramp that carried marble to the top of the Taj Mahal began from here. The manure of draft animals moving up the ramp collected in this place, hence the name Gobar Chowki, or if you prefer, Manure Square. Gobar Chowki was and continues to be home to Agra's Jatavs. With the decline of the Mughal Empire, every home in Gobar Chowki became a little factory, making shoes for mass consumption. The scale of business was small, and all members of the family were usually involved. One such family was that of Devkinandan Sohn. As a little boy, he worked in this hut, assisting his father in the manufacture of shoes. Devkinandan had a high degree of political awareness and a sense of self-worth. He took to heart the teachings of Dr. Ambedkar, the architect of India's constitution and a champion of her poor and oppressed. Every evening, Devkinandan would carry shoes to Hing Ki Mandi, the wholesale shoe market in downtown Agra. Walking through the by-lanes of Gobar Chowki, he would often wonder if the Jatavs would ever have the social mobility to become entrepreneurs instead of being artisans. Why were they completely dependent on the wholesalers of Hing Ki Mandi? The baskets are still coming to Hing Ki Mandi, but 3 decades ago, Devkinandan had identified the problem. The real deficiency was in design. Devkinandan persuaded his father to put him through a shoe design and leather technology course at the Central Training Facility in Agra. Once he graduated, there was no stopping Devkinandan. His shoe designs, bold, flamboyant, and colorful, quickly set him apart from the competition. As the business grew, Devkinandan built a magnificent new home with the same care that he lavishes on his shoes. Every day, Devkinandan Sohn returns to Gobar Chowki, where he calls on his parents. Somewhere, deep within him, there still remains a trace of the little boy who trudged through the streets with a basket of shoes on his head. It also gives him the chance to visit his ancestral home, a part of his past that he cherishes, even reveres. It's a daily reminder of how far he has traveled these past 20 years. His factory is one of Agra's largest, and his shoes sell under some of the world's best-known brand names, like Bally's and Florsheim. I discovered that Sohn's was by no means an isolated success story. A combination of traditional craftsmanship and entrepreneurship has propelled several others in the Jatav community to the very forefront of India's leather trade. Devkinandan Sohn is about my age. Both of us are children of independent India. What separates us, however, is far greater than what is common to us. I, a child of privilege, allow myself to become easily disillusioned and cynical. He, by comparison, has shrugged off the humiliations heaped upon him by history. I occupy myself trying to grasp and define a dream. He busies himself in translating his dreams into reality. As I reached Tilonia in Rajasthan, the sun was already setting on the great Indian desert. For over 25 years, night schools have been at the center of education in this area. I was told that this is the Prime Minister's village. And this young lady, all of 14 years of age, is the Prime Minister of the Bal Sansad, the Children's Parliament. Ram Kanya was elected by the 1,700 children who go to Tilonia's night schools. She bears this heavy responsibility with ease. A part of that ease comes perhaps from sheer habit. Ever since her father died, some years ago, she, the eldest child, has functioned as head of her family. Ram Kanya and a number of other girls in Murda village are now being trained to sew. Until recently, these girls were employed in the village carpet factory. However, Ram Kanya realized that while the carpet factory provided them a job, it did not offer them a future. Once those delicate little hands grew and became strong, they would no longer move swiftly on the loom. Soon after being sworn in as Prime Minister, Ram Kanya persuaded the authorities to train Murda's young women to learn to sew. Deprived of its captive labor force, the carpet factory is now closed. Seeing Devkaran, I was reminded of the line from Shakespeare. Crabbed age and youth cannot live together. Youth is full of pleasance, age is full of care. The bard may have changed his mind if he had known Devkaran. Like Ram Kanya, or for that matter, like thousands of other children all over rural India, Devkaran has moved directly from childhood to adulthood. His village, Sargaon, had long had a water problem. The only solution was to build a tank. But where would the funds come from? That's when Devkaran came on the scene. As Speaker of the Children's Parliament, he had some clout. He persuaded the local authorities to contribute part of the funds needed. Confident in his newfound political skills, Devkaran then convinced the reluctant villagers to provide the rest of the money. No wonder he struts confidently in his village. I was amused to hear people 3 times his age call him Devkaranji, a term of respect usually reserved for elders. As Speaker, Devkinandan runs Parliament with a firm hand. For him, for the Prime Minister, for the other MPs, this is a serious business. I had thought this would be no different from mock parliaments in schools elsewhere in the country. I couldn't have been more wrong. Officials and teachers of the night school program are pulled up for lapses in administration. Nor does the Speaker hesitate to point out to the Honourable Minister for Education her negligence. Of course, the fact that the Minister for Education did not support the Speaker when he made an unsuccessful bid for the office of Prime Minister might have something to do with his sarcastic reprimand. This is Devkinandan's second term as Speaker. He began fundraising for the water tank in his native village during his first term. Almost a year later, he has ensured that water can now be piped from the community tank to every home in Sargaon village. If I learned anything at all during my travels in India this momentous year, it was how little I knew about changes that have occurred at what are called the grassroots levels of society. Now, I really see what freedom means. It gave me a chance to meet people whose lives are a sort of permanent celebration of the human spirit. I'm grateful to these people for allowing me to peek into their lives and share with them their wisdom, generosity, and courage. In that sharing lies the essence of the freedom we have been celebrating this past year.